Welcome to the first live of the new academic year, I guess. What is it, 2025, 2026? I'm guessing many of you will still be on holiday. If you are, I hope you're enjoying the last few days of your holiday. I hope everyone watching managed a bit of a break over the summer. And, you've kind of managed as best you can to recharge your batteries and be ready to face the new academic year. Away from the terrible kind of headline news like the recent attack on Kyiv, the war in Ukraine rumbles on. The front lines have hardly changed at all. The Russians continue to take a few kilometers here and there at great cost, losing thousands and thousands of people. Russia continues its random terror attacks on Ukrainian civilians, with the attack in Kyiv last week being the most egregious example. And we continue to see the American government essentially helping Moscow. The most recent news is that the White House is now blaming Europe for encouraging Ukraine to continue to defend itself. I mean, if you ever wanted an example of the White House completely echoing the Kremlin's talking points, you've got it right there. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking to a wonderful woman called Maryna, who I think I first met in her role with TESOL Ukraine. I think she's added a request there, so let me see if I can get her on 1 second. And I'm on my first cup of coffee, and I've sort of forgotten how to do these things. I think that should be working for Maryna. Let's just wait a minute.
You can see that. Yeah, hello. Yeah.
How are you? Lovely to see you.
Yeah. I'm in Kyiv now, by the way. Yeah.
How are you? How is it?
My daughter got married yesterday, so yeah. Yes. So,
I always love to hear these kind of stories because it's like life going on even in the middle of all the...
Absolutely. The alarm, we were really scared of the idea of having an alarm at the time. And the alarm started just 2 minutes after the ceremony ended. So we were so lucky.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Pass on my congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you have limits now on like how big the ceremony can be and that kind of thing? Are there any restrictions?
Not really, but the whole ceremony, it includes, we wanted to include Ukrainian rushnik, which is embroidered piece of embroidery, yeah. And it was important for us to have karavai, like this festive bread, and usually it makes ceremony longer. It can be either very short or a longer one, and we had a longer one. So yeah. And the chances of having alarm at that time were greater, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been a really bad week in Kyiv, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I was really, at night, there were lots of explosions where we were. And, I thought, like, if new people are killed and all this, what kind of a ceremony can you have? But we were lucky.
Yeah.
You see everything from this point of view, like,
Yeah. I've probably mentioned it before in one of my lives, but my grandparents stayed in London all through the Second World War. And I remember their stories of kind of waking up after a heavy night of bombing, like 40, 41, and kind of looking out of the house and realizing that, like, number 38's been destroyed or something. And just getting up and going to work and carrying on.
Yeah, and living the life and continuing to live the life. You can't stop. Yeah. And I have stories where people were evacuated from their houses and had to go to work. They just went to work because what else can you do? You can either sit and cry, yeah, or you can continue working. And many people choose this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought last week was very interesting as well because it was clearly it was kind of negotiations a la Rus. You know, the way
Mm-hmm.
negotiates through messages involving bombs, and I think the fact that they targeted the British Council and they targeted EU diplomatic buildings, it's obviously Russia just kind of sending a message to Europe in the hope that Europe backs off. You know, I'm guessing. I think that's the way you have to understand it. That it's kind of what's the British Council even doing in our territory?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
saying
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
paladin.
You know, they see everything from the prism of their thinking. From that point, this very strange and distorted point of view, like on the human nature. And they believe the more terroristic they are, the like the chances for us to surrender are growing. But that's not true. That won't happen. And yeah, so.
I imagine a lot of the time the opposite actually happens because, I mean, you look at anywhere historically that's been repressed and occupied and colonized. I mean, I was in Indonesia over the holidays where my wife's
Uh-huh.
from, and we were there on August the 17th. It's our last day there. And it was the 80th anniversary of Independence Day from 300 years of Dutch occupation. And it's like for 300 years, people were resisting occupation and dreaming
Yeah.
of being free from the occupiers,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and the
That's
Dutch
how
tried
it happens, yeah.
their
And
own,
mm-hmm.
mass
Mm-hmm.
murder, incarceration, and repression of Indonesians, and it didn't work.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
So
and it won't work with us, of course.
yeah, no, it's very clear. And I think it won't work in terms of encouraging Europe to stop supporting Ukraine either, because I think most European leaders, with exceptions like Hungary, have realized that, it's impossible for Europe if Ukraine somehow loses. It's a disaster. So
Mm-hmm.
we're stuck in this situation where we have to keep fighting and helping Ukraine support, helping Ukraine keep fighting. So,
Yeah,
do you mind if we begin, Maryna, with kind of
let's start.
a little bit more about you? Could you tell us a bit about kind of where you grew up and about your family and stuff?
Yeah, I'm from Ukraine and I'm from Kryvyi Rih, from the place where President Zelenskyy was born and grew up.
Okay.
And yeah, so, and when I was a kid, I went to a specialized English school. And actually, by the time I had to go to the university, I didn't have any other choice. I liked English, and that was the Soviet style English. That was not the best way to learn the language, of course, but still, since that time, I'm teaching English, and like I feel really lucky to see this different perspective of how the teaching changed. And talking in terms of being in the Soviet Union and that time, I also feel lucky that we were a part of the Soviet Union and being affected by that propaganda, like we thought differently about the world. And now we can see the same situation, only we observe it. Of course, it would be much better to observe it without the war. But yes, still if we think about our life journey as a journey, so having this very different experiences is cool. Yeah.
And so, when you were growing up, were you? I'm guessing if you were growing up during the Soviet time, you must have been on the receiving end of all of that propaganda about brotherly nations and building a better future and
I believe that I lived in the best country in the world. Like
yeah,
that was my belief. Yeah.
yeah. And what was the process for you of that? starting to crack? Like, how did you come to kind of, I don't know, de-brainwash yourself?
That's difficult. My husband is from Western Ukraine and from the family which was involved into this different anti-Russian like protesting and fighting and all this. And when you grew up in Eastern Ukraine, you you are very suspicious of Western Ukrainians
Yeah,
who are very nationalistic. But as soon as you come and you interact with those people, you start feeling the essence, or you start understanding that they had a point, and that something there was probably not that. Like that was not the best world we lived in, and that the system was different. So my first this first step was not even at the time when Ukraine became independent, but just a year before, when we got married, and I went to Western Ukraine and integrated with this Western Ukrainian mindset, I started feeling like that something is wrong. And what is interesting, like my Western Ukrainian family, they have the saying, I will say it in Ukrainian and then translate, в усьому винен москаль. Like that Moscow or Muscovites are like responsible for everything bad that happens. And very often we were like, just this was a funny saying. But now we see it, that in propaganda and in doing many things that make like disputes, that provoke disputes between countries, like Armenia and Azerbaijan, for example.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, all the things в усьому винен москаль make sense, because really you understand that this is not the kind of empire that promotes multiculturalism, but the empire that uses the science of a human nature to make people hostile to each other. And this understanding is even like for me, that was my first step in decolonizing myself,
And
because you want to be a part of something noble
yeah,
and not a part of something disgusting.
yeah.
And probably that was my reason for starting, like becoming more nationalistic.
And when you were growing up, was your family Russian speaking? I'm guessing if you're growing
Of
up in.
course, of course, of course. My great grandfather was from Latvia, and he came to Moscow to help Lenin to help Lenin. So there were the so-called Латышские стрелки,
Yeah.
and he was one of them. So, of course, that was a Russian-speaking family. And uh, I remember we went to Belarus, and they asked us, do you speak Ukrainian? And I was like, no one speaks Ukrainian in Ukraine. We don't need Ukrainian. Why? And in Belarus, they had the same with their language. So, no, I believe that it's fine. It's fine to be like, we live in the best country in the world, and even after the independence, it's good to know two languages. It's good to be bicultural. It's good to know all the stuff. Yeah, but it doesn't work with the Russians, unfortunately. It doesn't work when you are friendly, and they see it as your weakness. And yeah, so it took me years to understand.
I think
It,
it's taken Europe a long time to understand this as well.
yeah, and now Europe is going through the same process. Yeah, if you have a different mindset, you don't believe, or you can't believe that people can be so mm, disgusting. I don't have another word. Yeah, it's just disgusting.
I
Yeah.
think it was a fatal mistake that many European leaders made, was assuming that somehow Putin was a politician like they were. And rather than an ex FSB head who had an FSB mentality,
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
you-
mhm. That mentality, it is very like sly, tricky, and if you don't possess this mentality, you won't believe that people can be so deep into it. Yeah,
so what
unfortunately.
are your memories of independence?
Of independence, nothing special. Of course, we all were for independence. And I remember that the first anniversary, we had, that was those were the years of the really poor years.
Yeah,
And at that day, the whole day, we had hot water in our apartment, and they just washed everything. And that's it. No, yeah, I didn't really like the Ukrainian anthem. I thought Shenev Merla is not like about death. So I never thought about it as much as I'm doing now. And I think that many Ukrainians, especially Eastern Ukrainians, they have gone through the same process.
yeah. And maybe, I guess, for a lot of Eastern Ukrainians, they've been forced to go through that process quicker because of
Hmm. Hmm.
in Dansk and those kind of regions. And I guess a lot of people were forced to start thinking about this stuff maybe 10, 11 years ago now.
Yeah, yeah. And Ukrainians are very stubborn. Like our feature is that we are very stubborn, and we have our own beliefs about human nature. And we usually believe that there should be a noble world without corruption, but it's okay to be corrupt. I mean, in this little bit. When you go to your doctor, for example, or when you need your kid to get a good job, that's fine with us. And now, um, this process of understanding how much of this is really Ukrainian and how much of this was inspired by the Soviet past, I
Yeah,
think really makes many Ukrainians like to be aware of what we are.
yeah. I mean, I guess that same process has happened with like the Baltic states as well. And I remember going to Latvia in 1998, maybe on holiday. Weird place to go on holiday in 1998. And at that time, I can remember seeing lots of graffiti saying "Russians out," and I didn't really process or understand. It's like, what?
Yeah,
Didn't make any sense to me at the time. And I look at it now, and I know that they were going through their own language issues, and that there were kind of stateless Latvians who'd lived there all their lives who didn't learn any Latvian and only spoke Russian, and that obviously that's become a bigger problem for them over time as well.
you can't believe that this process of colonization is so cruel. The steps, like they get this new territory, then they start like pushing propaganda into people's heads, and then they use these people to fight for other
Yeah,
territories.
yeah,
Yeah, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought that. Why should you act this way? Yeah, if you can uh, fool people, if you can if you can tell people about how good you are and something really like that necessary for their life, and it didn't seem really modern. Like it didn't seem really up to date. And as soon as you start understanding this, like this awful mentality, this concept of being greater than other people, like, and all this, yeah. So
it's
probably.
taken me a long time to understand this as well, because I mean, right up until 2021, I was still going to Russia and working in Russia.
Mhm, mhm.
Looking back on it, I start remembering lots of conversations I had with different people where you kind of go, ah, that's what that was about. And you
Mhm,
know, about
mhm, mhm, mhm. These statistics, like I read the statistics a couple of days ago that 40% of Russians believe that they are a unique nation.
yeah, I have a friend. She escaped. She escaped right at the start of the full-scale invasion, and she's in Berlin now. And we still talk. And she was saying part of the problem is that it's almost like the more people die for Russia during the war, the greater that people back home think the country is. Because
Mhm,
they're like, how
mhm.
accept 1 million killed and injured? It's like, it's insane. And she said, for lots of people, this is a sign of our greatness. This is a sign of the fact that we're prepared to fight and die for our motherland. And, 10 million people can die and they'll still be like, but we're a great nation fighting for
Yeah, yeah.
it.
It's how propaganda works,
Yeah,
and again about the human nature, how easy it is for people to start believing that they are unique.
yeah,
And
yeah. I
it,
mean, you see it in every country, I think, in some ways. You see it in England as well. There's a kind of dangerous strain of English exceptionalism and English nationalism and people coming to believe really dangerous sort of myths and lies like that. So, yeah, yeah,
It's for me, it was always a sign of an educated person when you are ironic about what you are doing, and when you don't perceive yourself as something like stable, unique, great. If you are an educated person, you probably question this all the time. Yeah, like, and thinking that you are unique, that's ridiculous.
So when did you start teaching, Marina? What was your routine? Because you said you went to an English kind of medium school, and then it kind of,
Yes, I started. Yeah, so I went to the university, and after that, I taught at school for just while I was at the university, and then I started teaching at the university in Kryvyi Rih. We moved back to Kryvyi Rih, and there I got a PhD. I chaired the department, all this, and finally, like after being a Fulbright scholar in America for a year, we went to Hawaii with my whole family, and it really changed. It really changed us as people because the concept of Hawaiian time, being happier than like the average people with the nature closer. And when we came back, I we decided with my husband, we decided to start language schools, and a year after that, I opened into class, which is my language school. And when the full-scale invasion started, I just needed something you can't stop thinking of the war. You get up and there is still the war.
yeah.
And with my colleague, we sort of bilingual, like I was always interested in teaching subjects in English. So with my colleagues, we started this bilingual schools, which, bilingual is not a good term. It's like two language schools. I don't know what is a good term when you teach subjects in Ukrainian and then the same in English.
Go with
But
bilingual.
yeah, we call it bilingual by now. And this is my experience. I believe that like Ukrainian kids are very traumatized now, and the problems with focusing was you can have the attack anytime, and of course we have kids whose parents were killed, and all the things, and I feel this mission. I feel that if we can teach these kids, if we can develop the materials that are good for these kids, then probably we'll be able to do it on a bigger scale later.
So it's interesting. So for you, the start of the full-scale invasion actually kind of led to some innovation in terms of the way you were thinking about your schools.
You know, there are a couple of ideas about how people connect. And one of the ideas is that we connect while we are learning. And it is really good for building networks, for finding friends, and all this. And especially it works with the teachers because we are natural learners. And yeah, with me, it works only this way. If I need to be like to relax, I need to learn something. And it works the same with many of my colleagues who are in TESOL Ukraine as well. We when we meet, uh, otherwise, we meet, and if we don't have a topic, if we don't have something to learn, we will probably start talking about the casualties, about the attacks, about the war. And we can't do this because it's the re-traumatization. You keep re-traumatizing yourself. And what we do, we learn. We learn, and that's why, yeah, it's for me, probably like when the war ends, probably that will be the most fruitful period of all my career because I work from morning till night just to distract my attention from the war.
And you said that you were trying to think about developing material that's more appropriate for the students. I mean, obviously, as a materials writer, I'm really interested in how Ukrainian what kind of issues Ukrainian teachers are finding with the material that's out there. And I mean, I know when we did third edition of Outcomes, one of the things publishers were very keen on was basically we just removed Russia from the course. And partly because there were like state adoptions at that time in Georgia, before Georgian Dream went completely crazy. They were saying that to get state adoptions, you basically you didn't have mentions of Russia in there, and it was strange for us because I think on one level there's a degree to which I feel slightly uncomfortable about removing anybody from anything. You know, it's like a story is a story, and if a story happens in Vladivostok, it's still a story, and if it's not part of a propaganda narrative. But at the same time, I understand that for students sitting in, Kharkiv being bombed, the last thing they want to do is hear a funny story from Vladivostok. So I
Mhm.
was just wondering what your experience of material and kind of what, what works well and what doesn't work well with students at the moment in your experience.
We have the same idea, like we removed all these museums and all the things, and I know that there is some cultural moment in talking about the Hermitage Museum, but you don't want to promote this,
Yeah.
and I appreciate what you are doing because we're doing exactly the same. We don't want to mention all this, maybe later,
How
because
in the Hermitage when Russia is looting museums in Kherson, it's just it's
or stealing our or stealing our works of art and bringing to that museum to
yeah,
enrich their collections, because many works of art were just stolen by them,
yeah.
and they are in that museum. So of course we don't want to promote this at no cost, like just no way. Yeah? But what is difficult now is this problem of focusing of the students, because they're really distracted by what is going on. And yeah, we already don't ask them to learn anything by heart. We just do this constant recycling, lots of visual support, and yeah, and of course, many topics are like kids may come to. There was a moment when Kryvyi Rih was bombed all night, and next day the kids come and they are like second graders, and one girl says, there was a huge thunderstorm that night, and my mom said that of course they all woke up, and her mom says, for you not to be afraid of the thunder, we will just move to the corridor or to the bathroom. And many of them, they just, I just wonder what strengths their parents should have to become at this moment and to tell them tales or to read books. Many people read a lot at nights to their kids, and how focused he can be after that.
Yeah, I often wonder as well about, is any topic truly neutral? Because I think, you have a unit on family and you're going to have someone in the class whose parents are fighting or who've died. You have a unit on holidays and it's like, well, we can't do holidays anymore. It's almost like,
Same with us. Same with us. We don't do family tree anymore.
yeah,
No family trees because, like in the bilingual school, there are kids whose dads were killed, and as they are paid money for this, I mean, the families get money. Their parents were able to send kids to a private school, like using this money. And of course, these kids, they are heavily traumatized, and we don't do family trees.
yeah.
Or there are kids, like there is one kid who comes and says, while we were with my mom staying abroad, we came back home and my dad has a new wife. So his family tree now includes two wives. And it's fun. Of course, it's funny. Yeah, it's good that they all are alive. But that was the moment when we stopped doing family trees. Because the stories, these family stories, they like we cry all the time. And
I taught a Korean woman once and her husband had been murdered in a racist attack in London. And I taught her about 2 weeks after her husband had been killed. And I knew she'd been having therapy at the university. And I got to know her really well. And I basically said, like, are there any topics you don't want to talk about? And she said, everything we talk about reminds me of my husband. Okay, so
Mhm,
if we talk about movies, I think about the films we used to go and see together. You talk about holidays, I think about holidays we used to have. It's
mhm, mhm. Yeah,
she, she was strong. I mean, she was an adult and she lived through the revolution in Korea. And she basically said, talk about everything. And if I don't want to say anything, I won't.
yeah,
Um, and that was the first time I kind of realized that this idea of avoiding triggering topics it's basically impossible because,
yeah, yeah.
if you lost someone close to you, everything reminds you of them. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
you just
it just takes
very careful.
years. Yeah, with the girl whose dad was killed, it took 2 years to become more focused because every time she started crying, like,
Yeah,
and that was the 6-year-old girl.
yeah. And I guess it's very demanding on teachers now in Ukraine in those situations where, most teachers, as part of our training, you don't learn to teach trauma. You don't learn to teach traumatized people. And so you've got a whole generation of teachers now who are having to be very conscious and sensitive towards the conversations they have and the relationships they have in class. And I often wonder how, you were saying about Ukrainian parents, how do Ukrainian teachers deal with this?
We have lots of trainings about how to teach kids with trauma, but it's good to be trained.
Yeah,
It's good to know how to process your emotions, and it's good to know the coping strategies and breathing techniques and all this. But as you said, even those trainings, they traumatize you more because everything traumatizes you. Everything traumatizes you, yeah. And I think we are lucky as Ukrainians because we have this special attitude, like we call it My son, he's interested in theater. We all are theater goers, and that was we had a very interesting talk about the specific genres that are peculiar to certain nations. And while, for example, Russians, they are on this people get stressed and all this, and your inner soul and what you feel and how you do, and you're always unhappy, and you are always, so something very dramatic happens. So Ukrainians, or our genre, is tragic comedy. We have the tragic event, and then it becomes, so there is always this comic side that makes this event not very tragic. And it was interesting for me to learn that historically Ukrainian theater developed this genre of all the plays were in this genre, and this is fantastic. I think this is our way to cope with these difficulties that we are facing throughout the history. And also it helps a lot to our mental well-being, because we still keep joking. And we joke all the time. And even with, though these jokes, they're rather sore. Yeah? So they're not the funny jokes. It's like the black humor very often. But this tragic comedy and this idea of seeing life, that the process that is going on, it doesn't stop. Yeah. So it's somewhere very deep in Ukrainian mentality, and it helps a lot.
I was just trying to think of what the definitive English genre would be.
You should ask ChatGPT, because it's interesting. It's interesting to, it's interesting to define the genre that naturally developed,
Farce is probably quite deep in England. Like that idea of basically we try to pretend everything's well organized and everything goes well, but actually everything's a complete shit show and it all falls apart. But we just about manage to muddle through everything and see the funny side of it. I think farce is probably quite, there's a lot of farce involved in living. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, but it's when we look at Ukrainian the founders of Ukrainian theater, and they were not the part of the empire because they didn't have to impose this imperative narrative of the empire, but they were writing and they were performing what was close to what was really the part of their life, how they saw the world, and that was tragic comedy. It is interesting to think about it.
No, I mean, I was thinking about last time I was in Ukraine in April, and I was in Kharkiv and Odessa, and I mean, it sounds strange to tell people when you come back to England, but a lot of the time there was a lot of laughter. And a lot of it was like you'd have a cigarette break or a coffee break, and you'd nip outside, and one of the guys who was smoking, the air raid sirens would go off, and he'd sort of say, "How do you like our Kharkiv sound system?" And it's just very dry, very funny kind of humor like that.
Lots of jokes, and I even have just a couple of weeks ago, I read. I don't remember what kind of a writer was that, but how he comes to Ukraine from Russia, and he lives in a Ukrainian village, and he characterizes Ukrainians as well-fed. Yeah, the people who eat well and who joke all the time. Yeah, so this is our way of communication, and these jokes they are not yeah. I think it's our way of communication. Yeah, and they say humor keeps us alive. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. I saw that one as well. Can I just rewind a bit and ask you, what were your memories of 2014? Haven't really talked about that yet.
Yeah, so for me, it started in 2013 when the Euromaidan was, so when the fighting started there.
Yeah,
And I was in Spain at the time in the immersion program with the Spanish teachers. We lived on a villa. We were well fed. We were drinking wine. That was a really good time. But one day here, I read in the news that the students so that this student protests that they were so some students, they were beaten, some students, they were taken to prison, or I don't know what happened. And I was deeply affected by this, and I was so unhappy that even good wine and Spanish teachers and all this, it stopped meaning anything. And from that time, I understood that I need to be here in Ukraine when it goes through difficult times. And it's more the feeling of being a part of something great, and being here since 2014 is like, I don't know, it's like being a part of history. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But talking about 2014 and the Crimea, you know, here it was the feeling that it's okay. They wanted to be Russians. Let them be in Russia. We don't need the Crimea because they are so Russian-minded. But then people from Donetsk started coming.
Yeah.
And I chaired the department at the time. And I remember the family who came. The father, he was like 60 plus at that time. He was a professor in Ukrainian history. His daughter was a teacher of English, and they was what we call the professor family living in Donetsk, like for generations.
Yeah.
They had really nice apartments in the center of Donetsk, like we call it professor houses. And they came to Kryvyi Rih with what they could put into their car. Like everything, all the books, everything they had was left there in Donetsk. And immediately after they left, another Russian family came from Russia and took their apartment. And that was the story that really amazed me. Like, how can you come into this apartment? How, how can you live there a happy life? And those memories of other people, like, how can you be happy with that? Yeah, probably my awakening really started with that family from Donetsk.
At that time, did you have a sense that it could expand from there, or did you have a
No,
feeling it was
no,
fixed, that
no.
that was,
Yes, we always had this feeling that they wanted to be with Russia. They are so close. They are so Russian-minded, and this family, they were the exceptions. Like this Ukrainian minded families, they were not. I don't like. I've been to Donetsk only once, but I never heard people speaking Ukrainian there. And my idea was like, so probably it will be better for them to be in Russia. But
which is clear. I mean, it's funny because I mean, I was in Donetsk in 2012, and after the occupation, I just didn't process it properly. And I remember when I was there seeing lots of Ukrainian flags on the walls as well. I've still got pictures of this from 2012. And I guess the propaganda was so clever, and they were so quick, the way that the Russians got the propaganda out, and the way they did the whole thing about the People's Republics and all of that,
mhm,
that it seemed kind of believable. And
mhm.
all,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yes,
yeah.
lots of people in Ukraine as well kind of swallowed that story.
Yeah, and I also had a colleague. She was from Lugansk region, and she came to Kryvyi Rih with her husband. And her mom, she stayed there in Krasny Luch, which was like Lugansk region. And her mom always knew that living in Ukraine is better than staying there. And during all the years, she had this news from her mom saying that I pray for being back. Yeah, so, but I don't know how many people of this mindset were there, how many of them had relatives in big Ukraine, in Ukraine. Because if you don't have relatives here, like Yulia's mom, she saw that Yulia got a grant, started her own business, that she could travel and all this. So her mom could compare. I don't know if you can't compare how your critical thinking can develop if you are in propaganda all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know now in Donetsk there's kind of huge problems going on with water supplies and, basically 10 years of occupation and they've done nothing to properly develop it or integrate it apart from, like you said, kind of brainwash people and mobilize them.
They don't need it. They need to brainwash and mobilize, and that's it. There are no men there, like because they all are either killed or fighting.
Yeah,
This is the only way the empire can spread,
yeah.
like that empire. Yeah.
And so, what was your experience? So you've got this kind of strange time from 2014 to 2022 where in most of Ukraine, life goes on as normal, with families maybe appearing every now and then from Lugansk or Donetsk. What was your experience of the beginning of the full-scale invasion?
Yeah, at that time, my son was married to a Bolivian girl, and her father was in like close to the embassy or something. And I remember just 3 days before we were in Kiev, and Ceci says there will be the war. And we were laughing, like, no way. How can it be possible now in the 21st century? Like, I thought that Russians are already or have already invaded us with all their media products, with the cultural things. They already were like invading us with all this. The day we heard the explosions, but in Kryvyi Rih you always hear the explosions because this is an industrial city. So I just got up and started working. I usually like working in the morning, and then my husband woke up and he said, the war started. And I was like, no, how can it be? Like, you can't believe in such level of stupidity. Like, how can people be so stupid to start bombing other people and killing their own people and humans? And in Kryvyi Rih, I was in two groups, and I was in two trainings at that time. And it was funny how people were, of course, it was not funny, but it was interesting how people were coping with this. One girl from Yenichesk, she sent the picture with the Russian flag. And people are telling her, no, no way. It can't be this way. It's just like, we didn't believe, many of us didn't believe. And in the other group, people were given advice on this breathing exercises. And then it was growing, like the support from Western regions of Ukraine was growing. They were saying, come to us, stay with us. My apartment is for you. Just my house. I have an extra house. Just come, stay. We never believed it would last so long.
And did you stay in Kryvyi Rih at this point, or?
And it was, we were very close. We now are 40 kilometers from the front line, but at that period, Kherson Oblast, it was very close. And you probably heard this, that people from Kherson region, they couldn't come from the occupied territory. They couldn't come. Their cars were confiscated, and many of them were using bikes. And they were at the time they were just coming to Kryvyi Rih on the bikes, and there were hundreds of bikes. And people just came. And they lived in the hostels and everywhere there. And every day there were the news that Russians are close to Kryvyi Rih, and they were really close. I had some friends from abroad, and one of my friends, she just went with her kids to Greece, and she stayed there because she couldn't come. For some time she stayed there, and then she came back, and she was like texting me all the time, Maryna, you are going to be attacked very soon, leave Kryvyi Rih, leave Kryvyi Rih. But somehow we knew that they won't get in, because Kryvyi Rih is a very long city and it would be difficult for them. We were watching the news about Mariupol, and we knew how difficult it was for them to get every just meter of the territory. So, but people who stayed abroad, they were more affected and more scared than we staying here. My husband every day, of course, we didn't work, and every day my husband, just to keep himself busy, he went to make this bombs, when you have from the bottles, and they made like thousands of this. Then we started helping people who were coming from Kherson region, and by the moment that when Kherson region was deoccupied, was freed or liberated, or how to say it, so we kept having ties with those people. And probably now for me, this Kherson region is people from Kherson region are the closest people who were affected and who came back. And now we are watching how their lives are getting, of course, their lives will never be the same.
They're trying to close the road into Kherson, aren't they? They're basically using drones on the roads and trying to stop any cars coming in and out, and as well as all the
But I still know many people who live in Kherson and who live there in Kherson region, and they told the stories that when their villages were occupied, for example, there was a family who had 10 cows, and what do you do with this? And they just let the cows go. Yeah. And for me, it was the most striking moment because I know how close you are with your domestic animals. So, and that was very, for them, that was very painful.
Can I ask you something slightly different, Maryna? I was wondering if you still had any family that are in Russia, or if you still have any professional contacts, because I'm guessing in the past there was probably more connection between Ukrainian teachers and Russian teachers, and I wondered if you have any connections anymore, or how that worked.
I don't, and I didn't have a family there when the full-scale invasion started. And those stories when people become enemies. But in most of my friends who have family in Russia, they are supported by their Russian families. Okay. I learned that people who have higher degree of education, who are more educated, they are not brainwashed to that extent. So very often, but again, many stories when a grandmother believed that we have to be liberated.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Friend
mhm.
whose mother married Russians and then phoned up saying you should all die for being Nazis, and it's like, thanks,
Mhm.
Mum. Lovely to talk to you. Wow, you know.
I have a colleague whose mom went to Russia to visit her mom. Yeah? And it was just a month before the full-scale invasion.
Wow.
And when the full-scale invasion started, that mom was calling Natalia, who is my colleague, and saying, Natasha, just wait a bit. You will be liberated soon. It took her just 1 month, 1 month. And Natasha said, Mom, who, who are you going to liberate? Yeah. And it is strange how it works. It just, how this brainwashing, how this propaganda,
Well,
maybe we
stronger than,
don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that's the remarkable thing for me. It's like, it's stronger than your own personal experience. It's stronger than your family bonds, that you've got this kind of,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, mad imperial mentality stuck into your head.
Hmm. Hmm. And many people are like, Mom, she keeps asking, who bombed the Mariupol hospital? Like, God.
Wow.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I have two more things I'd like to ask you about, I think. The first one was just through your, many years of experience in Ukrainian English language teaching, and through the amazing work that, TESOL Ukraine does and everything. What kind of changes have you noticed in English language teaching within Ukraine?
Great changes. When TESOL Ukraine just started, it was in 1990s. The level of English of the teachers was really low.
Yeah,
The teaching in the Soviet Union involved texts about Communist Party and all this,
yeah,
learning rules.
yeah.
Yeah.
Translate the life of Lenin into English.
Yes, 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 yes. And talk about the mausoleum and all the things. And now the level is really high. And I see that many people, they learn the language even like before you had to go to the university. And there you perfected your language. But now many people know it without it. And thanks to the books like yours, by the way, yeah, and thanks to the lexical approach, yeah, exactly. It helps a lot, like starting to feel the language, how it works. Plus, of course, people travel,
Yeah,
and that makes it really different. Yeah. Plus, many people live abroad now.
yeah, yeah. I guess you've got a lot of Ukrainians now who like speak three, four, five languages. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And again, if you think of life as a journey, yeah, it's amazing what we have witnessed. Yeah.
yeah,
This track from being very rigid, being like very rigid in understanding how you teach, what you teach, like rules and all this, and going through this because teaching lexically and communicatively, it's not about the ways how you teach, but also about the philosophy of teaching.
yeah.
And it just changes the whole philosophy of your teaching. You're not the teacher anymore, like teacher. And I think it also changes you as a personality, because we are much changed through what we are doing. And this is one of the ways, like being imposed, like we were not imposed, but being introduced into this level of teaching and this philosophy of teaching also changed us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I notice it myself from my own experience of working with Ukrainian teachers, just how, I mean, A, the level of English is remarkable these days. And I think B, the kind of hunger and curiosity to learn and keeping up with things that are going on, and just yeah, the desire to kind of continually keep developing, I think, is really strong, even in the middle of the full scale war, which is amazing.
Talking about our mentality, like we are also like I believe that we are a nation of thinkers. Like we love tinkering different things, learning about this and that, and we easily learn. Like as a nation,
Yeah,
as people, and having good teachers also helps. So
yeah.
when you have someone to learn from, it also helps a lot.
No, it's interesting you say that because I mean I think you can also see it in the way that Ukraine has adapted to the way the war has developed.
Mhm, mhm,
You
mhm,
recognized the necessity of having to adapt constantly and kind of think outside the box. And so, you're looking at things like the sanctions on Russian oil not working properly, and so Ukraine.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
we have our own form of sanctions on the Russian oil industry,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
a lot of those kinds of things are very, very innovative in their own way.
Yeah, yeah, it's how Ukrainians think. And that was our mistake because our innovation many years ago was to start the Russian Empire. Yeah. And that also was very innovative, but you know how
Yeah, not all innovations work out equally well. Um,
you
so,
can't predict the results of your innovations.
so the last thing I wanted to ask really was kind of maybe it's a stupid question. I don't know. How are you feeling about the coming weeks and months, and what do you see happening? Like, how are you looking at the coming winter and the of ongoing development of the war?
Like maybe the most frequent thing I hear here in Ukraine are the words of Viktor Frankl, yeah, the one
Yeah,
who survived in the Nazi camps.
yeah,
Yeah, so about just living your life. And that's difficult because we went through the stages. The first stage was we believed it will end very quickly. And it really helped. We were with my husband, we were drinking a lot of alcohol and believing that it will like end up very soon. Next stage was we were really unhappy with all that was going on without no electricity. So the water in Kryvyi Rih is awful. I mean, the running water, the tapped water is just awful because the Kakhovka was ruined. Yeah, so, and you get angry with this, but then you learn how to buy water, how to use this water for cooking and all this. And this is what happens. And we just can survive, which is good. Yeah. And I don't I don't believe that there will be peace very soon. But I do believe that we will survive and we won't surrender. This is my belief.
how do you feel when you see Americans or some Europeans saying that Ukraine just has to make a peace deal and give up land and then everything will be fine?
Uh, like we can say that we will do it, but we won't do it. We learned that we can say a lot, but it's not necessary to do what you say. So probably that will be this way. We will we will be saying that we will do it, but our main understanding is that we need to ruin the Russian Empire. So, and this is, I don't know how quick it will happen, and I don't know whether it will happen at all. Yeah, but that is the only peace deal that we are looking for
Yeah, yeah, I think it's the only realistic peace deal as well. So,
for us, unfortunately,
yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Maryna, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being the first person to invite me to come over to Ukraine during the full-scale invasion. Um, and thank you for everything you're doing for teachers in Ukraine.
You,
And
I can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming. You can't imagine what your first visit to Ukraine meant for us. There was, mm, there is a lot of support, I mean moral support, but that's different from coming in person. And when you came, when you agreed to come, there was already like my first step to healing. I tell you, because many people, they say, like I have friends from Ternopil and they are afraid to come to Kryvyi Rih. And coming to Ukraine from abroad, for many people is very scary. So you are our hero. Thank you so much. It supported us a lot. And how you acted, how much effort and how much energy you put into us. Even now, I see many colleagues and they say, wow, that was the unbelievable 2 days, or the unbelievable 2 days in Lviv. After that, we started living our new lives because that was the real support. That was the support, and how you interacted with all the people. That was good. That was one of the best moments of that time. Thank you so much.
thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
Take
Thank
care.
you so much.
Okay. Papa.
Bye bye.